August 2024, a neighborhood dispute over children playing near Susan Loren's home ended tragically when a single gunshot through her front door killed A.J. Owens, a mother of 4. Loren's actions, fueled by hatred and racism, landed her behind bars. This is what happens to Karens in prison. December 4th, 2021, Jaime Granger believed she could escape the law, but when it eventually caught up with her, she didn't surrender easily. With all the entitlement of a true Karen, she fought back, insisting on having things her way at every opportunity. She was convinced that the rules didn't apply to her, even when sitting in a jail cell. On that day, Jaime was driving her blue Hyundai on Highway 54, just south of Carrizozo, New Mexico. But Jaime's road trip was far from ordinary. Other drivers had noticed her swerving and speeding, which are common indicators of a drunk driver. And when 2 police officers attempted to pull her over, things got even crazier. So about 20 miles down the road, the officer found Jaime's car parked at a Speedway gas station at Tularosa. Inside the store, Jaime was trying to play it cool, pretending she was just there to use the bathroom.
You are such an asshole! Let me go!
So what happens when you run from the police?
I didn't do anything to the police!
Yeah, okay.
Let me go!
It was definitely a hard sell, especially when she's reeking of booze. And once in the police car, Jaime took back what she said and told officers that she hadn't had anything to drink that day. She would even agree to do a field sobriety test, but she failed it miserably.
Hang on, don't start yet, okay? I didn't tell you to start. All right, do you understand my test?
You know what? I'm drunk.
Even after failing the test, Jaime kept trying to manipulate the situation, asking to grab her phone from the car. But the cops knew better than to let her near anything that could make things worse. And they were proven right when they found 2 bottles of hard liquor in the car. One of them already half empty. But the drama was far from over. As the officers tried to handcuff her again, Jaime fought with every ounce of stubbornness she had left.
Oh, get off me! Get off me! Get off me! Stop it!
You're gonna get a
Stop it! Assault!
You're gonna get an additional.
Let me go!
Once they got her in the cuffs, Jaime's tantrums only intensified, pushing the limits of everyone's patience. But by this point, Jaime's charge count was up to 4, including multiple counts of battery on a police officer. After being transported to the New Mexico State Police Office, the officers hoped they could finally get her processed without further incident. But Jaime had more tantrums in store.
You assholes! Let me go! Let me go!
I'm just gonna take her straight to OCDC.
Let me
and
go!
go from there.
Let me go!
Her relentless behavior gave her another charge for battery on a cop, bringing those potential penalties up to $10,000 in fines and 18 months in prison. At this point, the officers had no choice but to take her straight to the Otero County Detention Center. But jail didn't really do much to calm down Jaime.
That's where you sent me. Bunch of assholes trying to break me.
The officers who initially arrested Jaime showed incredible patience, but other officers were quickly losing theirs.
I want my phone call now.
When you get back from the hospital.
No, I want it now. I want it now.
I don't know if you realize this, but this isn't Burger King, all right?
Even the paramedics weren't safe.
She keeps throwing off her seatbelts during transport, and I've deemed it unsafe to transport her because of that behavior.
In the end, the arresting officer would be the one to get her to the ER. Jaime eventually pled guilty to aggravated DWI and 2 counts of battery on a peace officer. But whether she spent more time behind bars remains a mystery. What's clear, though, is that Jaime's wild night serves as a vivid reminder. No amount of kicking, screaming, or finger pointing will get you out of facing the consequences when the law catches up with you. Sometimes you just have to face the music, and no, you don't get to pick the tune.
That video shows me in the worst possible light on my worst possible day. And That's not who I am.
It's June 2020, and Deborah Hunter walks into a Pier 1 store in Jacksonville, Florida, with no idea she's about to become one of the internet's most infamous Karens and end up serving jail time. It all goes down when Hunter, furious with store employees who refused to process her return because she didn't actually have the item with her, just a photo of it on her phone, she would keep screaming, swearing, insulting, and threatening the staff, all while refusing to put on a mask. Watching from a distance was Heather Sprague, a brain cancer patient who was immunocompromised and on a rare public outing during the pandemic. So concerned by Hunter's escalating behavior, Sprague quietly began filming the incident. But Hunter noticed that camera and immediately turned her rage towards Sprague.
I think I'll get real close to you and hop on you then. How's that?
Oh, the video went viral almost instantly, and Hunter quickly became a symbol of privilege and irresponsibility. But the fallout didn't stop online. Hunter was arrested, charged with a misdemeanor assault, and soon found herself in court. In the end, a judge in Jacksonville sentenced her to 30 days in jail, along with a $500 fine, 6 months of probation, a mandatory health evaluation, and of course anger management classes. Oh, and she has to cover the cost of Sprague's COVID-19 test. Yet beyond these penalties, Hunter had to face an even harsher punishment: public humiliation. Her face became synonymous with recklessness and entitlement at a time when kindness was needed the most. During the hearing, Hunter spoke tearfully about how her actions had affected her family and how they no longer felt comfortable in their own community. Even while saying sorry, she had to talk about herself.
It's lower their heads and turn the opposite direction so they won't be recognized or approached. And I know exactly what they're feeling because I do the same thing.
Judge James Ruth points out that she was focused on her own suffering and the impact on her family, rather than the harm she could have inflicted on Sprague, who had to endure days of anxiety waiting for test results that could have altered her fragile health. Now, before the sentencing, Hunter had twice tried to plead guilty without jail time, but the judge rejected both offers, insisting that accountability was necessary. In the end, Hunter's punishment was a reminder that actions have consequences, especially when they put others at risk. And of course, acting like a Karen leads to nowhere good, especially when the whole world is watching. Anna Sorkin, better known as Anna Delvey, the fake Harris who scammed New York's elite, is a prime example of how entitlement and audacity can land you in prison, and how some people refuse to learn their lesson.
Do you feel bad about some of the people that got burnt along the way?
Can you name me the names of the people? And I'll tell you if I feel bad about them.
January 23, 1991. Born to working-class parents in Russia, Sorkin moved to Germany at 16 before bouncing between London and Paris, and eventually landing in New York City 2 years later. Now there she would craft this elaborate persona, complete with fake financial documents, to back her claims of having a 60 million euro trust fund locked away in Europe. Using nothing more than Microsoft Word, she would create these bank statements and wire transfer confirmations to fool those around her, securing loans and luxury accommodations and a lifestyle that would eventually just crash and burn. But before this happened, Sorkin had managed to fraud and deceive major financial institutions, banks, hotels, and individuals out of over $275,000. 2017, the scam comes crashing down on Sorkin when she was arrested during a sting operation set up by her former friend, Rachel Deloche Williams, who accused Sorkin of swindling her out of $62,000. 2 years later, Sorkin was convicted of multiple charges, including grand larceny, and was given 4 to 12 years in prison. But even behind bars, Sorkin's sense of entitlement remained as strong as ever. During her trial, we saw that Sorkin had a hairstylist, Anastasia Walker, curating her courtroom look, ensuring that she made a statement in every appearance. Each day, Sorkin would walk into the courtroom dressed in carefully selected designer outfits, creating an image that was more fashion show than felony trial. And after serving just 2 years in prison, Sorkin was released on parole. only to be detained again by immigration authorities for overstaying her visa. And by October 2022, she had managed to secure a $10,000 bail and was placed under house arrest in New York, where she's now confined to her apartment with a tracking anklet that she's decorated with rhinestones, like another piece of jewelry in her collection.
So, and I voluntarily chose to kind of stay here and to figure everything out. So hopefully people will give me some credit for that.
And just like that, Anna Sorkin's back to living as if nothing ever happened, flaunting the same luxury lifestyle, maintaining the same shameless attitude, and showing the world that consequences are merely temporary inconveniences. Her story even inspired the Netflix miniseries Inventing Anna, which transformed her into a pop culture phenomenon and cemented her status as a celebrity of sorts.
So what does a day in house arrest look like for you?
Well, so far I've been pretty busy, so I'm like having people over all the time, and like I've done a bunch of shoots.
In interviews, she's shown little remorse, calling her time in prison a pointless waste of time, and the prosecution against her an insult to her intelligence. And she would boast that guards treated her like a celebrity. On top of that, Sorkin maintains that she did nothing wrong, and astonishingly paints herself as the victim, even casting her former friend, Rachel, the very person she scammed, as the real villain in her story. May 2017, Sorkin invites Rachel and 2 other friends at this all-expenses-paid luxury trip to Morocco that was inspired by Khloe Kardashian's lifestyle. She booked a $7,000 a night room at La Mamounia in Marrakesh. However, Sorkin's credit cards had failed after a few days, and she blamed the hotel staff for that issue. Eventually, she convinced Rachel to pay the $62,000 bill with her credit cards, promising to reimburse her. It looks like Rachel only got back $5,000, and she struggled financially, even having to borrow money to cover rent. Following Sorkin's arrest, Rachel shared her story in Vanity Fair and wrote the bestseller, My Friend Anna.
I don't actually feel a lot of anger. Mostly I just feel like I would like to never cross paths with her again.
But Sorkin, undeterred, fired back on the gram, labeling Rachel as a Karen and accusing her of exploiting white woman tears to sell her story, displaying that same shameless audacity that got her in trouble in the first place. Sorkin also wrote,
"Well, I can understand her being upset at the fact that I've already accomplished more from the various jails and prisons than Rachel in her entire sheltered life of privilege. She won't be getting away with this blatant hypocrisy on my watch."
And so, despite her criminal past, Sorkin continued to act as if prison was just a minor inconvenience in her ongoing performance of self-made infamy. In her world, there's no shame, no humility, and certainly no lessons to be learned. She's still playing the role of the untouchable socialite, and probably in her mind, the only crime she committed was getting caught.
You've been described as a con woman, very good con artist.
I don't see myself as such.
You don't think you've conned anybody?
No.
February 2013, 18-year-old Penelope Soto learned the hard way that defiance in a courtroom doesn't come without consequences. Soto was arrested for possessing Xanax, facing Miami-Dade Circuit Judge Jorge Rodriguez Chomat in her orange jumpsuit, acting more like she was at a party than in front of a judge, stroking her hair and laughing, seeming unfazed by the seriousness of her situation. When they asked her the value of her jewelry, she chuckled and dismissed that question with a smug smile.
How much would you say your jewelry is worth? It's not a joke, you know, we're not in a club now.
Soto continued to laugh and told the judge that her jewelry was worth a lot of money, like Rick Ross. The judge wasn't amused, and then asked if she had taken drugs in the past 24 hours, to which she replied, no. The judge sets her bond at $5,000, and then does this.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Come back, ma'am, come back. Count one will be 10,000.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Adios.
Looks like that smug grin got wiped off her face.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Adios.
Now, Soto seemingly doesn't know when to shut her mouth. As she turned to leave, she couldn't resist one final act of rebellion, flipping the judge the middle finger and shouting, "F you. That was the last straw.
I heard you saying to...
Yes, I did. I'm not going to the...
I believe you... Did you say...
Yes,
me?
actually, I
Did you say that?
Yes, sir, I did.
Oh, you did say that?
I'm not
I find you in
gonna lie.
direct criminal contempt. 30 days in the county jail.
Okay, that's fine.
The incident, caught on camera, quickly went viral, turning Soto into an overnight sensation for all the wrong reasons. Days later, a different Penelope Soto stood before the court.
My behavior was very irrational, and I apologize not only to the court and you, but to my family.
Soto's apology appeared sincere, and the judge decided to show leniency. He dropped the 30-day sentence, citing Soto's status as a first-time offender, also her admission to abusing Xanax, her commitment to rehab, and her genuine remorse. After the incident, Soto worked on turning her life around. She attended rehab, passed her drug tests, and worked toward getting her GED with her family's support. Now, if there's one takeaway from Soto's story, it's that getting on a judge's bad side is the quickest way to land behind bars, something our next Karen learned the hard way. It's 2011, and Melissa Hardwick goes to court for a domestic violence hearing brought by her estranged husband. But what was supposed to be a standard appearance quickly turned into chaos. Judge Jennifer Edwards was in charge when Hardwick's temper took over. As her husband calmly explains why he'd filed the order, Hardwick kept interrupting, ignoring repeated warnings to stay quiet. So fed up, the judge would give her 10 days in jail for contempt of court. And Hardwick didn't take that too well.
Contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She'll be arrested for 10 days for contempt of court. You go now.
Security officers rushed in, tackling Hardwick to the ground as the judge stood inches away from the chaos. That outburst not only gave her contempt of court, but also gave her some more legal problems. She was given 120 days in jail now and hit with additional charges like terroristic threatening, intimidating a legal participant, and resisting arrest. To put the cherry on the cake, the judge decides that the domestic violence order filed by Hardwick's husband would stay in effect. And so Melissa here is a clear example of how quickly things can go wrong when you decide to go all Karen in a courtroom. February 14th, 2023, Taylor Shabusiness shocks the courtroom and the whole nation when she attacks her own lawyer in a Wisconsin court. But this wouldn't be Shabusiness's first time making headlines. 2022, she became infamous after accused of murdering her lover, Shad Therian, in a gruesome act that left everyone horrified. She admits to strangling him during sex while they were both under the influence of drugs. Then she continues the sexual acts with Therian's lifeless body before dismembering it, removing his internal organs, and then further mutilating his remains. Like, what the f***? Her actions led to charges of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. Now, her courtroom behavior suggested that her volatile nature might run deeper than just a drug-fueled rage. During a routine hearing, when Judge Thomas Walsh announced a delay in her trial, Shabusiness snapped. Enraged by the news, she lunged at her own attorney, Quinn Jolly, blaming him for the scheduling setback.
Stop it.
Jolly, who had requested more time to arrange a second expert evaluation of Shabusiness's mental competency, was left visibly shaken but uninjured. Following that, he has to be removed from the case, and the judge granted that request. A new attorney took over, and the trial moved forward. July 26, 2023, Shabusiness was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. The jury's decision was unanimous, and she was later given life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge would say that he had to protect the public from her.
This crime offends human decency, it offends human dignity, and it offends the human community. It really does.
Now we find her at the Taycheedah Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, where she's serving as an example of how unchecked rage and entitlement can explode in the most shocking ways. Despite her attempts to defy the court, she ultimately sealed her own fate behind bars, showing that not even the most defiant, disgusting, most sick Karen can escape accountability. 2018, the town of Fernandina Beach, Florida, was shaken when Kimberly Kessler commits this brutal murder that would soon reveal years of lies and stolen identities. Now, this happened after Kimberly Kessler, who had been working at Tangle's hair salon under the assumed name Jennifer Seibert, caught the suspicion of her co-worker, Jolene Cummings. Unbeknownst to everyone, Kessler had spent over 25 years mastering the art of vanishing, using more than a dozen aliases. This time, though, her luck ran out. And tragically, at the cost of an innocent woman's life. April 2018, Kessler's elaborate facade starts to crumble when she began researching Florida cases where bodies had disappeared, hinting at having a sinister plan in mind.
Evidence shows disturbing internet searches made by Kimberly Kessler before Jolene Cummings' murder, including this search Kessler typed into her phone.
And almost a month later, when Jolene Cummings vanished, Kessler's actions became increasingly suspicious. Surveillance cam from May 16th shows someone dressed in black parking Cummings' Ford Expedition at a Home Depot parking lot and walking away. Now that was Kessler, later identified through various security cameras, which led investigators straight towards her. What's more, when authorities searched Tangle's hair salon, they discovered massive amounts of blood using luminol, all of which belonged to Jolene Cummings. The investigation quickly focused on Kessler, who was found later that day, living out of her car at a rest stop. She was arrested for grand theft auto, but the real shock came when she revealed her true identity during a videotaped interview.
When you run my fingerprints through, they come up as Kimberly Lee Kessler. That's about it. So I would prefer to be called Kim.
Now, she seemed initially casual and unbothered, but her demeanor shifts when detectives begin pressing about Jolene Cummings' disappearance.
So let me reply this way, and you may not like the answer. I would like legal counsel.
Kessler later claimed that she had run away from home after high school, living under assumed identities after dating a bank robber in Arizona. But records show she was living in Pennsylvania until 2004. So at 35, she apparently left town, telling her family that she was heading south to take a new identity. She lifted from a tombstone Jennifer Mary Seibert, a girl who died in a car crash in Germany and was buried in Butler, Pennsylvania. 2012, Kessler's family finally reports her missing, but by then, the local cops had made the distinction. Kessler wasn't a missing person. She was a woman who didn't want to be found. And by September 2018, she was charged with Cummings' murder. She took a shot at incompetency by going on a hunger strike, dropping to a skeletal 89 pounds. But the judge ruled her mentally competent, despite her often being wheeled into court emaciated and ranting. In jail, her behavior took a turn for the worse. She was charged with battery after stripping naked, smearing feces on herself and her cell walls, and even flinging it at the guards.
Jordan Beard is Jolene Cummings' cousin. Jordan Beard is Jolene's cousin. And I refuse this assigned counsel.
But now, could someone who evaded capture for 25 years, living multiple lives, truly be incompetent? Or is this another twisted scheme, an entitled attempt to avoid responsibility? December 2021, Kessler's trail of deceitful destruction came to an end when she was sentenced to life without parole. Sheriff Bill Leeper, who led the investigation, told the media,
"We're gonna celebrate her new home for the rest of her life, which is gonna be Florida State Prison."
November 2017, Diana Lovejoy sat in court, stunned by the guilty verdict. Despite her twisted scheme, she would act as if she didn't deserve the punishment. But what exactly did she do to end up here? September 1st, 2016, Jason Kovach's desperate 911 call reported that his friend, Greg Mulvihill, had been shot. It was just past 11 at night, and the two friends were on a secluded trail near the Avenida Soledad in Carlsbad, California. What they didn't know was that there was a man hiding in the bushes, waiting for the opportunity to shoot Greg. And as the police began their investigation, they quickly learned that Greg was in the midst of a bitter divorce and a custody battle with his estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy. So in 2014, when the couple split, Lovejoy had accused Greg of abusing her and their son, but after a thorough investigation, no evidence supported that. The investigation would show more about Lovejoy's activities during their separation. She would head out to the Oceanside gun range and start her training, where she met Weldon McDavid, a man who later installed a security system at her home. So despite being married, McDavid and Lovejoy became romantically involved, and he became increasingly agitated whenever court rulings didn't go in her favor. And so the police thought that if Greg was targeted and shot, McDavid might have some answers. And it turns out their suspicions were correct. McDavid and Lovejoy were the ones behind that plan that led to Greg getting shot. At their joint trial, the two lovebirds pled not guilty, but it didn't work out in their favor. Now the court heard how McDavid, using a burner phone bought by Lovejoy, posed as this private investigator and lured Greg to the dark trail with a fake promise of incriminating evidence. He told Greg that he would leave evidence on a pole along the path, evidence that could be used against him in the custody battle. Of course, there was no evidence. Greg and his friend arrived armed with only a baseball bat and a bicycle light. As Greg shone the light around, he spotted McDavid in camouflage, lying in the bushes with a long-barrel gun. Then came the shot. The prosecutors painted McDavid as a hired hitman, manipulated by Lovejoy, whom he described as manipulative, narcissistic, and completely self-absorbed. Sounds like a Karen? McDavid claimed that he only intended to shoot out the light in Greg's hands, fearing it might be a gun. He insisted that if he had wanted to kill Greg, he could have easily done so. However, the jury wasn't convinced by McDavid's defense. They found both him and Lovejoy guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and premeditated attempted murder. When the verdict was announced, Lovejoy collapsed in the courtroom.
Of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
Oh, Diana Lovejoy. She was given 26 years to life in prison, while McDavid received 50 to life. And you could say Diana should have definitely remembered that if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. It's 2020, and Suzanne Craft, a 55-year-old woman, let her entitlement and racism take over and would become the worst kind of Karen. Now, she's in jail because of what she did to her neighbors.
First, he sentenced her to 9 years in prison and 3 years supervised release when she gets out. But he called the details of this case, quote, shocking, vile, cruel, degrading, and disturbing.
Everything started when Craft targeted her neighbors, Michaela and Connie Pineda, an interracial couple, with relentless hate. She mailed them threatening letters, filled with racist slurs, bullets, and promises of violence. Craft would even go as far as to paint the N-word and a swastika on their driveway, acts that were caught on Pineda's security cameras. The harassment reached a point where the federal authorities stepped in, and despite being served with a no-contact order in July 2020, Craft couldn't keep herself from crossing that line again, repeatedly violating her order and earning short stints in jail and house arrest. By March 2023, Craft faced the full weight of her actions. She was convicted of 5 counts of mailing threatening communications, and the federal courtroom got to hear the constant fear the Pinedas lived under. Later, Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark summed up Craft's case perfectly.
There's no room in civilized society for violent threats based on race. We hope this result brings some measure of peace to victims who had to suffer through the defendant's terrifying threats of racial violence.
In the end, Craft was given 9 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. For the Pinedas, it was a long-awaited sense of justice after enduring months of fear and torment. As for Craft, she probably thought she was going to get away with terrorizing her neighbors, but the law did catch up with her, and now she got nothing left except serving hard time. It's August 16th, 2024, and Susan Lawrence, a 62-year-old white woman from Ocala, Florida, was found guilty of manslaughter for shooting her African-American neighbor, a GK A.J. Owens, a 35-year-old mother of 4. Now, the two were in a bitter feud over Owens' children playing near Lorenz's home. Tensions escalated when Lorenz hurled racial slurs and even threw objects at her kids, pushing Owens to confront her. Owens knocked on Lorenz's door, demanding answers. Instead of a conversation, Lorenz fired her gun through the door, striking Owens in the chest as her son stood nearby. Owens was unarmed, but Lorenz claimed that she acted in self-defense, citing Florida's controversial stand your ground law, which allows people to use deadly force if you threaten their feelings. Lorenz's arrest was delayed for several days following the incident, which obviously sparked national outrage, reminding many of the infamous Trayvon Martin case, where Martin was shot by a neighborhood watch volunteer, George Zimmerman, who also claimed he felt threatened. But here's the thing. Lorenz's actions were disturbing and was happening long before Owens was killed. This twisted individual loved tormenting neighborhood kids, blasting loud music, honking her horn for no reason, and even waving guns at children. Phyllis Wills, a neighbor, described Lorenz as someone who had a problem with children being children, recalling how she'd go out of her way to provoke and scare them. Now, during the trial, the defense somehow tried to paint Owens as the aggressor, saying she pounded on the door and yelled threats. Lorenz also had previously told detectives that she feared for her life, but the prosecution highlighted a critical fact. Owens was on the other side of a locked door, unarmed and angry, but hardly a threat that justified lethal force. In the end, the jury didn't buy Lorenz's story. After a quick deliberation, 6 of her own white people found her guilty of manslaughter.
We, the jury, find as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter.
Lorenz now faces up to 30 years in prison, but her actions have already caused irreversible damage. A mother's gone, 4 children are left without her, and a community is trying to grapple with the reality of how quickly things can escalate when hate goes unchecked.